My wife cheated with her ex, planned to take $1 million from my company, but when the judge found out my mom owned everything, she only got $50K and left broken. I'm 35 years old. I run a tech consulting company that I built from scratch. And I need to tell this story because what happened last year literally changed my life and the way I see people. I guess I should start from the beginning, when things still seemed normal, when I still believed I had found the right person and that my life was finally taking shape. I met Samantha like 4 years ago, I think, or maybe it was 5, I'm not exactly sure. She worked in public relations for a mid-sized firm. Nothing spectacular, but it was a decent job, you know. And I was in the middle of growing my business. I had been working on this for like 10 years. I started when I was 25 with basically nothing, just me and my laptop, offering tech consulting services to small businesses that had no idea how to modernize their systems. The thing is, I was good at it. Really good, actually. And little by little, the business grew into something serious, with major clients and contracts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. By the time I met Samantha, I was already making really good money, like 6 figures a year, easily. And things just kept getting better. Samantha was beautiful. I can't deny that. She was like 31 when we met, and there was something about her that attracted me. I don't know. She was charismatic and funny and seemed genuinely interested in what I did. We dated for 2 years before getting married, and honestly, those 2 years were good. Or at least that's what I thought. She was attentive, she supported me with the business, came to networking events with me, that kind of thing. I never thought there was anything weird, never saw red flags, nothing. Well, looking back, maybe there were some things, but you know how that is. When you're in love, you don't see what you don't want to see. We got married like 3 years ago. A nice wedding, but not over the top. Like 100 people. At a nice place on the outskirts of the city. My mother Ruth was there. Of course, she's always been my rock. Literally, the smartest woman I know. My father died when I was like 16. A sudden heart attack. And since then, my mom took care of everything. Raised me practically alone. Supported me when I wanted to start the business. Everything. She's an incredible businesswoman. She has her own accounting firm, so she understands how this entrepreneurship thing works and always gave me the best advice. This is where the story gets interesting, and it's something I need to explain, well, because it was what literally saved me. When I started my business 10 years ago, my mom told me something that at the time I didn't fully understand, but now I see as the smartest decision of my life. She told me, Thomas, put everything in my name. The business, the important assets, everything. You manage everything. You're the CEO. You make all the decisions. But legally, I'll be the owner. And she explained why. She told me that in this world, you never know what can happen. Divorces, lawsuits, anything. And having that legal protection was crucial. I was like 25 and thought she was being paranoid, but I respected her too much not to listen. So basically, from day one, everything I built was technically in my mother's name, even though I was the one managing it completely. When Samantha and I got married, she quit her job like 6 months later. She told me she wanted to focus on other things, maybe start her own project. I don't know. And I was making enough money to support both of us without a problem, so I told her it was fine. I thought it was normal, that couples support each other like that. And besides, she said she eventually wanted to have kids and prepare for that. Sounds stupid now, but at the time it seemed reasonable to me. She basically stayed home, supposedly working on business ideas or personal projects, but the truth is, I never saw her really do much. She went out with friends, went to the gym, that kind of thing, but real work, like nothing. Things started to change like a year and a half ago, maybe less. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when because it was gradual. Samantha became more distant, colder. At first I thought it was stress or that she was going through something personal. I tried to talk to her several times, but she always told me she was fine, that she was just tired or had a lot on her mind. We stopped having sex as frequently, which before was like several times a week, and suddenly it was like once every 2 weeks or less. She started going out more, sometimes coming home late at night, saying she had been with friends. And I believed her because, Why wouldn't I believe her, right? She was my wife. I was supposed to trust her. Like 6 months went by like that, with her increasingly distant and me increasingly confused, until the day came that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I remember it perfectly because I had finished a meeting early and got home like at 3, when I normally arrived around 6 or 7. Samantha wasn't there. She had gone out to who knows where, and I sat in the living room to check some emails on my laptop. But it turns out I realized I had left an important document on the house shared drive, so I went to the office, where we had the desktop computer that we both used for personal things, and there was Samantha's laptop, open, without a password because it had stayed logged in. I'm not one of those people who check their partner's phones or computers. Seriously, I had never done it, but there was something on the screen that caught my attention. Her email was open and I saw a name that sounded familiar. Gregory, who was her ex-boyfriend from like 5 years ago or something. She had told me about him before. Said they had ended things well and had no contact, so seeing his name there seemed weird to me. Curiosity got the better of me, I guess, and I opened the email. And that's when it all started. Literally, my world collapsed. In a matter of minutes. The messages were from the last 4 months, basically since she had started getting more distant. They weren't just normal messages from exes catching up. No, they were clearly romantic messages, intimate, telling each other they missed each other, making plans to meet, talking about hotels. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, literally couldn't breathe well, but I kept reading because I needed to know how bad this was, and believe me, it was worse than I could imagine. Turns out Samantha had been seeing Gregory, this guy who, according to her, worked in I don't know what but was basically unemployed most of the time, for months. They met when I was working, went to hotels, did everything people having an affair do. But what really destroyed me was that I kept scrolling through the messages and found conversations where the two of them were literally planning what the divorce was going to be like. Samantha was telling Gregory that she was waiting for the perfect moment to ask me for a divorce, that according to state laws she was entitled to half of everything because we had been married more than 2 years, and that my business was probably worth more than $2 million at that point, so she was going to walk away with at least $1 million. Gregory responded with things like, "Finally we'll be able to be together with real money," or, "That idiot has no idea what's coming." There was a message where Samantha literally said, "I've been researching, and it seems that since I left my job to support his career, I have a very strong case to claim a significant part of the business. My lawyer says we could get up to 60% if we play our cards right." I sat there reading this, my hands shaking, feeling like I was going to throw up, thinking, is this real? Is my wife really planning to destroy me financially while cheating on me with her ex? I took pictures of everything with my phone. Every message, every email, everything. I know exactly why at the time. I think it was pure instinct, but I knew I was going to need evidence. I closed everything, left the laptop exactly as it was, and left the office. I sat in the living room trying to process what I had just discovered. And honestly, I don't know how much time passed. Maybe an hour? Maybe 2? Until I heard the door open and Samantha came in with shopping bags, all smiling like nothing was wrong. She saw me sitting there and asked me, "What are you doing home so early?" And I just looked at her and said, "We need to talk." She put down the bags and sat across from me with a confused expression, like, "What do you want to talk about?" And I told her directly, "Who is Gregory?" I saw her go pale, literally all the color drained from her face in a second. She tried to compose herself and told me, "What? What are you talking about?" But I already knew. I had already seen everything. So I told her, "Don't lie to me anymore, Samantha. I know about Gregory. I know you've been seeing each other. I know everything." She was silent for a moment that felt eternal, and then she simply broke down. She didn't cry or anything dramatic. She just admitted everything with a coldness that surprised me. She told me, "Okay, yes, I've been seeing Gregory, so what? You're never here. You're always working. You left me alone all this time." She tried to turn the situation around, as if I were the culprit, as if the fact that I worked hard to maintain our lifestyle somehow justified her cheating on me for months. I said, "What about the divorce plans? What about taking my business?" And she literally responded, "It's fair, Thomas. I left my career for you. I sacrificed myself for this marriage. I deserve half of everything you've built." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her, "You sacrificed? What exactly did you sacrifice?" "Leaving a job you didn't like anyway, to stay home doing basically nothing while I work 60 hours a week?" And she got furious, started screaming that I was selfish, that I never valued what she contributed to the marriage. All that garbage. I just looked at her thinking, this woman is completely crazy if she really believes she has a right to my business just because she decided to cheat on me. That's when I played my card. The only advantage I had in this whole horrible situation. I told her, in the calmest voice I could, "Samantha, there's something you need to know about the business." She looked at me confused and asked me, "What?" And I responded, "The business isn't in my name. Technically, it's never been in my name. Everything is under my mother's name from day one." I saw her expression change, as if she suddenly understood that her whole brilliant plan had a huge problem she hadn't considered. She told me, "You're lying. That's not possible. You run the business. You're the owner." And I explained to her, "Yes, I run everything. I'm the operating CEO. But legally, my mother is the owner. All the main assets are in her name. It was a decision we made years ago for asset protection reasons." She started to panic. I could see it in her eyes. All that confidence she had that she was going to come out of this with $1 million was crumbling in front of her. She told me, "That doesn't matter. I still have a right to something. I'm going to sue. I'm going to fight this." And I just responded, "You can try." The next few days were hell. Samantha stayed in the house, sleeping in the guest room. We barely spoke to each other. I had already contacted a lawyer, a good one my mother recommended, and I explained the whole situation to him. He told me that the business ownership structure was legitimate and that it was going to be very difficult for Samantha to claim anything significant, especially considering she had never really contributed to the business and that she had also committed adultery. In our state, that still matters in divorce cases. It's not like in other places where it's completely no fault, so Samantha's adultery was definitely going to play against her. Samantha hired her own lawyer, one who apparently was known for being aggressive in divorce cases, and started the formal process. The first mediation session was like 3 weeks after the discovery, and let me tell you, it was a surreal experience. We were sitting in this office, her with her lawyer, me with mine, and my mother was also there because technically she was an important part of all this, being the legal owner of the business. Samantha's lawyer started with her whole prepared strategy, talking about how my wife had sacrificed her career, how she had been a devoted wife, how she deserved to be appropriately compensated for her contribution to the marriage. I just listened, thinking, seriously? Is she going to pretend nothing happened? My lawyer let her finish her speech and then presented the documentation that demonstrated the ownership structure of the business. He showed that from the beginning, 10 years ago, everything had been legally in my mother's name, that all significant assets were under her name, that I was basically a very well-paid employee, but not the legal owner. Samantha's lawyer's face when she saw those documents was priceless. Literally, her jaw dropped. She started reviewing everything with an increasingly worried expression, and then asked for a recess to talk to her client. During that recess, my lawyer told me this was going much better than expected, that we had basically dismantled their entire strategy from the start. And when they came back, Samantha's lawyer had a completely different attitude, more defensive, trying to look for other angles like the house we lived in, or the cars, or the joint bank accounts. But it turns out we had been careful there too. The house was under a mortgage where I was the only holder because we had bought it before getting married. The important cars were in my name, and the joint accounts had relatively little money because I kept most of my savings in separate accounts. It's not that I had specifically planned this for a divorce. Rather, it was that my mother had taught me to be careful with my finances and to keep things organized and protected, and that was now saving my skin. Samantha was furious. I could see the hatred in her eyes from across the table. At one point, she even tried to appeal emotionally, telling me, "Are you really going to leave me with nothing, Thomas? After everything we lived through together?" And I just thought, seriously? After you cheated on me for months and planned to rob me of everything? Now you want to play the emotional card? I responded very calmly, "Samantha, You made your choices, now I'm making mine. The thing is, Samantha didn't give up easily. When she realized that the normal legal route wasn't going to give her what she wanted, she started playing dirty in other ways. She started a social media campaign, posting vague things but clearly directed at me about abusive and manipulative husbands, about men who financially control their wives. All that narrative. She never mentioned me directly, but all our friends and acquaintances knew who she was talking about. She started contacting people we knew, telling them her version of the story, where I was the villain who had used her and was now leaving her on the street with nothing. Some people believed her, especially those who didn't know me very well, and suddenly I started receiving messages from people who thought I was a monster. It was frustrating, but my lawyer advised me not to respond publicly, not to enter that game, just let the legal process run its course. It was hard, I'm not going to lie, because part of me wanted to scream the truth, tell everyone about Samantha's cheating and plans, but I understood that wasn't going to benefit me legally. Meanwhile, her lawyer kept trying to find some angle. They requested complete financial audits, tried to argue that there were money flows from the business to me that should count as marital assets, even tried to involve my mother in the process, arguing that the ownership structure was fraudulent and only designed to evade marital obligations. But my mother had all the documents in order, had paid taxes appropriately for years, everything was perfectly legal, so those arguments didn't go anywhere. The divorce process extended for months, like 8 or 9 months in total from when I discovered everything until we finally got to court. During that time, Samantha continued living in the house because her lawyer argued she had the right to remain there until everything was resolved. So basically, we were living under the same roof but not talking to each other. Her in the guest room and me in the master. It was one of the most uncomfortable experiences of my life. Literally, it was like living with an enemy. Finally, the day of trial came, or well, the final hearing where the judge was going to make decisions about asset division. We were all there. Me with my lawyer, Samantha with hers, my mother also present because she was part of the case. Samantha's lawyer made her last attempt, presenting her as this victim who had left her career to support her husband, who had been a devoted wife for years, who deserved fair compensation for her sacrifice and contribution to the marriage. My lawyer presented all the evidence, the business ownership documents showing it had always been in my mother's name, the financial records demonstrating that Samantha had never contributed economically to the business, and yes, he also presented evidence of the adultery, although the judge said that was secondary in the asset decision. What carried the most weight was demonstrating that Samantha had left her job by her own decision without me asking her to, that the business had been built completely before meeting her, and that the ownership structure was legitimate and not a fraud designed to evade marital obligations. The judge listened to everything, asked some questions, and then gave his verdict. Basically, he said there was no legal basis for Samantha to claim any part of the business, given that it had never been under my name and that she hadn't contributed to its development. As for other assets, he ordered a relatively modest division. She kept her car and some furniture, I kept the house and my main assets, and I had to give her like $50,000 as a type of compensation for the years of marriage, but that was it. $50,000. That's what she got after months of fighting, of hiring expensive lawyers, of doing all that drama. In her mind, she was going to walk away with $1 million or more, was going to live comfortably with Gregory forever, and she ended up with basically nothing in comparison. I saw her leave the court that day, looking completely defeated, and honestly, I felt neither satisfaction nor pity, just exhaustion. I was exhausted from the whole process, from all the negativity. I just wanted it to end. The divorce was finalized like 3 months ago. Samantha took her money, her things, and moved with Gregory to an apartment on the other side of town. I heard from mutual friends that things between them aren't going as well as they expected. Apparently, Gregory is still without stable work, and she's looking for a job, but it's difficult after having been out of the job market for years. I'm not going to lie. Part of me feels a dark satisfaction knowing their brilliant plan blew up in their faces, but another part just feels sadness for all the wasted time and energy. My mother and I are closer than ever. I thank her literally every day for having advised me to put the business in her name years ago. Without that decision, I would have lost everything I worked for during a decade. She always tells me, "Son, In business and in life, you have to protect yourself, not out of distrust, but out of intelligence. And she was right, completely right. The business keeps growing. In fact, this year has been one of the best in terms of income. I've focused completely on work, on expanding to new markets, on hiring more people. I probably work more hours now than before, but I no longer have to worry about coming home and finding someone who's stabbing me in the back while smiling to my face. As for relationships, I haven't dated anyone since the divorce. I'm not ready, honestly, and I don't know if I want to risk myself like that again. I know not all people are like Samantha, that healthy and honest relationships exist, but now I have this distrust that I didn't have before. My friends tell me that eventually I'll open up again. That time heals everything, all those cliches. But for now, I'm fine alone. I have my work, I have my mother, I have some close friends who supported me during this whole disaster. That's enough. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't come home early that day. If I hadn't seen that open laptop. If I hadn't read those messages. Probably Samantha would have continued with her plan, waiting for the moment she considered perfect to ask me for a divorce, and I would have been completely blindsided. At least discovering it when I did gave me time to prepare, to understand what I was dealing with, not to let myself be emotionally manipulated during the process. The biggest lesson I took from all this, apart from the importance of protecting your assets, is that you really never completely know someone. I thought I knew Samantha. I thought we were a team, that we were building a life together, and it turned out she was playing a completely different game. I don't know at what point she changed, if she was always like that and I simply didn't see it, or if something happened that transformed her into the person who was capable of planning all this. I'll probably never know, and that's okay. It doesn't matter anymore. Now I'm focused on moving forward, on continuing to build my business, on making sure that all the effort and sacrifice of the last 10 years is worth it. My mother tells me that someday I'll meet someone worthwhile, someone honest and genuine, and maybe she's right. But for now, I'm fine being just Thomas the businessman, the son who listened to his wise mother, the guy who learned the hardest way possible that protecting what you build isn't selfishness, it's survival.